Hey, it's Biddy Penny. Welcome back to my channel. This is part 4 of a series that I've done this month, and this is the cast of characters that I've been working with. Today, we are working with the final character. She's going to be our baker. And so here is my Tim Holtz portrait doll that I selected. And then I'm going to be working pretty much exclusively with this Tsunami Rose Tea Party Desserts digital paper collection. This is a 26-page collection. I only printed up 13 pages, so I only printed up half of it. I absolutely adore this collection. I will be using it again and again. I just know it because I'm a baker, you guys. I used to bake cakes when I was in college professionally, and so this just hits right at home. Now this piece right here is the only thing that's not included in the kit. This is from a totally different shop, but I thought it was perfect. I loved this little bakery, and I thought that it just went like this was this baker's bakery. I thought that this would be perfect place for her. So I will be bouncing between the inside and outside of this card a lot in this video, and I'm making an A9 card. To start, I am making a domed shadow box card. I'm using my scoreboard. I cut the paper down to 6.5, and then it's also at 8.5. And then I'm scoring at 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch on each of the sides of the 6.5 inch. Okay. So this is going to be our domed shaker. Sorry, it's not a shaker, a domed shadow box card. Okay, so I'm folding those score lines in and then out. This is what's going to pop up this dome and make it pop up off of the card. All right, so I'm just using my scoreboard and cutting board. I'm not using any dies. If you had a rectangle die, you could use it here, but I just wanted a 1-inch frame cut out. So I'm just measuring this at 1 inch and then cutting it on all 4 sides. Actually, I may have misspoken. I might have done this at 1/2 inch on each side. Let me double check that. I have the card right in front of me. As I was looking at it, I was like, that's not 1 inch, that's a 1/2 inch. So yeah, I did a 1/2 inch frame around it. And on this cutting board, it just is so amazing because it has lines that help you know where the blade is going to cut. I chose this paper as my background paper for the front of the card, and now I'm auditioning my portrait doll for a paper to go inside of my card, and it was really hard to narrow this down, you guys, because there are so many gorgeous papers to choose from, but I did end up choosing this one. I just love the teapot, the flowers. I like how she fits there, and so on the other 3 cards in this series, the portrait doll has gone on the front of the card, but on this card, I decided to put her on the inside. So just to change things up and add more variety. So I did decide on this paper, and I'm going to trim it down, taking off the white border. I chose to print it with a border instead of borderless because I wanted it to fit on this A9 card and have some space around it. So an A9 card is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper scored at 5.5 on the 11-inch side, and that's it. There's no cutting. I'm going to show you right here. So I've got an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I'm scoring at 5.5, and that's it. This is my card base. So that's the size of the card. Now there was a little overhang here, so I did trim that off. But this card size is one that I truly enjoy. So the marine biologist card that I made last week in this series was also an A9. And then the other 2 cards that I made in this series were 5x7s. I've really gotten away from making very many A2 cards unless they're for donation. But if I'm planning on making like detailed cards like this series has been focused on, then it's going to be a larger size because it gives me more real estate, more options, and I just enjoy it more. My Christmas cards are always 5x7 that I make to send out. It's just kind of how I've become as a card maker over time, is enjoying these larger card sizes. Okay, so I want to insert her into this scene, if you will. I want to integrate her in and make sure that she looks like she belongs, and I just wanted to make it all blend together. So I am using my razor blade here, and I'm just cutting along the places where I want to tuck her in. And I love how that teapot curvature is just perfect over her shoulder. I think she's like meant to be. For me, she looks like she just perfectly belongs there in that spot. I absolutely love her there. So now I've got that all set. I'm just gluing down the teapot. And all the little pieces so that that piece is complete. This card, even though I'm not doing any stamping, I'm not doing any die cutting or any of those typical card making things, I'm only using paper, I'm still doing different techniques and a lot of layering. So I did distress the edges of those pages with my scissors, and now I'm doing the same technique for the front of the card so that I can pop that little bakery in and have those edges there, those scrolled edges, kind of finish it off. Again, it just gives it such a nice look, rather than just gluing everything on top of the paper. If you can find ways, if there's designs like this that you're working with, think about using, an X-Acto knife or a razor blade and inserting your ephemera into, your background paper in a way where they all look cohesive. It blends. Now sometimes with ephemera, I totally pop it up. And when I totally pop it up, I mean, I'll use cardboard, foam, whatever. I really want it to pop off the page sometimes. But in these kind of cards, I want it to be more cohesive. And so here I'm just taking off little details, cutting between the trees and the bakery, things like that. You don't have to do that. It was just what I wanted to do. I'm doing this kind of thing more after having done so much collage now. And then I'm using a blue ink blending brush, and I'm ink blending some blue around all the edges on the two sides and the top. I chose blue because it's like the sky, and I really like the way it's adding contrast. Now, I didn't go crazy gluing that down because I know I want to put more layers behind it. And this, like I said, I went between the front of the card and the back of the card the inside of the card quite a bit in the process of making this. So right now we're working on the inside of the card again. And what I'm doing is, again, distressing with a blue ink, the same blue ink that I used to go around the bakery on the front of the card. Here at the bottom, I'm adding the pink, and then I decided to go around all the edges with the pink. So it's just turned out so beautiful having like two colors ink blended around the edges. I think that is so lovely. And it's going to give a nice kind of anchor for these pages. I didn't love them just like the idea of gluing them down on the white card base. I felt like it was just too stark of a difference. And so having this ink blending around it, they just seem to belong now. There's not so much of a drastic border around them. I could have printed these borderless on my printer and then they would have gone all the way to the edges. But again, I did want some edges, and that's why I chose to print these with the borders. Okay, so now I'm returning to the front of the card, and I want to start assembling the front of the card. I did really burnish these score lines, you guys, and these folds. I wanted that to be very defined. And now I'm just going to kind of line things up here because I do want this to be very centered. It's got some design elements that I want to be just kind of perfectly centered. And so I took a look and then made sure to get it as close as possible, and it worked out. And I got all the design elements in it that I wanted. Okay, so I am going to use this whole sheet of ephemera except for the envelope. Every single thing you see there will get put onto this card except for that envelope. I'll use that later because it's super, super cute envelope. But I'm going to go ahead and cut out all of these sentiments. They kind of make the card extra fun. I mean, they totally make the card extra fun. So this one that says Flower Child, Flour, I put with our Tim Holtz Portrait doll, and I put it up in the flowers, which is just so fun, very punny, and fun to have that play on words there. And I loved how this lady resembled our Tim Holtz doll. Like, she has the puff sleeves and she just seems to fit perfectly in the same kind of like time period with her. And so she's going to go on the front. I also like that she's in this perfectly teal soft color, which, you know, matches the kit, came from the kit. It's all coordinated. I thought these tickets were super sweet as well. And so I'm going to use both of them. I'm going to use one on the front of the card and one on the inside of the card. I really wish I would have distressed the edges of this ticket on the front of the card. I didn't. I did it on the inside, but not the front. Next time. If I were to remake this card, I would do that. So see, it's important that I didn't fully glue down all the edges to that little bakery and the trees. That way I could do this layering and get it exactly the way I wanted it. I liked this sentiment on top. And it says, eat dessert first. And now I can go back in and glue down all the edges. I brought in acetate. There's two things if you want to recreate this card. I would use very sturdy paper for my card base and my domed frame. So I used 110-pound high GSM cardstock for this card. I also used 10 mil acetate. I think that these two things combined helped build the structure of the dome so much better. It helped it hold its structure because the materials are very thick, very strong and sturdy. I don't know if you'd get the same results using like a 65-pound weight paper or a lower GSM rated paper. So I would recommend that. I will leave the paper that I use, I will leave the acetate that I used linked down below for you guys. Here I am adding my double-sided tape, and I am rolling the tape over. So the tape is bigger than this little 1/4-inch fold that I have. And so I'm going to show you here. I'm just kind of rolling it back on itself and making sure that it stays within that 1/4-inch line. Okay, and then I'm adding wet glue on top of my double-sided tape so that I have more wiggle room. Now here is an important aspect of building this card. You want that taped and glued edge to be the thing that you're lining up to the edge of your card. Don't worry about what the top looks like. You only need to worry about the 1/4 inch that you're gluing or taping down to the edge of your card. Now I had glue on my fingers and I needed to trim a little bit of acetate off the top and I made a mess. And I left this in because you know what? This happens to all of us. And so I had to grab baby wipe and clean off the glue. Then I needed a paper towel to dry the baby wipe so it wouldn't have streaks. Like, this is just the realness of what it's like creating. So I left it in for you guys. All right, again, I'm only worrying about lining up that 1/4 inch that's going to be glued down to the edge of that card base, lined up and glued down. And by doing this, it created this dome. It will fold flat to mail, by the way. It'll mash down flat. But when it's up and like in presentation mode, then it will be domed. I absolutely love it, you guys. So this is what it looks like. I did go in and trimmed up and used all of that ephemera, and I left the fussy cutting in because, again, that's a lot of what this card was. It didn't have a ton of fussy cutting, and the fussy cutting that I did was very easy and basic, but this is a card with no dies, no stamps, no other things. This is just a card using paper and a piece of ephemera. And so I needed to fussy cut. I wanted all of the sentiments, you guys. I thought that it would make it extra fun, and I think it was the right choice. Like, if I had just added one or two, I don't think it would have delivered on kind of the quirkiness of the card. And so by adding all of them, it just seems perfect. So I have the Chocoholic that I put at the top, Lovin' from the Oven in the middle of those spoons, and then Batter Up for the bottom. I just love it. And then, you know, Flower Child by our baker, and the front says Eat Dessert First. And I think by just having all of that in there, it really delivers on how I wanted the card to feel like when someone would receive it. I could use this card to invite a girlfriend out for treats, you know, to give someone for a birthday, or a self-care card like, hey, go treat yourself. I just think it is lovely and fun and sweet. Definitely sweet. If you don't have printables, you know, if you don't have a printer, I understand. But I do believe Etsy offers printing services now. Like if you bought the Tsunami Rose kit, I do believe that they have printing services. But you could also just use any paper that you have in your collection. Here I did decide to go ahead and I wanted paper here at the top and bottom edge because it was just showing the white card base. So I grabbed a scrap from this kit, and where the background page ended, I just glued down this paper on the top and the bottom. So you see I'm adding glue wherever there is no paper currently. Then I'm adding this little strip of paper. And I really do feel like this finished off the card. This is such a small detail, but it's the small details to me that make the difference. So I am going to trim off the excess here. And now I really do feel like the front is done, and the back was a little messy with ink. If I did more ink blending on paper, I would have less of this problem, but because I do it on a glass surface, it gets on my stuff. So this just happens sometimes, but I used this lovely paper on the back. I had a scrap from a different kit that I added down at the bottom. I just thought it worked. And then I can always stamp my Handmade by Bitty Penny stamp on a piece of paper and glue it on the back if I want to, or I could just write Handmade by Bitty Penny on the back here. Whatever, but I do love actually the way it finishes off the card. So happy accidents, as Bob Ross would say. Here is the finished card, you guys. It's quite fun. It's very delightful. I love it so much. I hope you enjoy it as well. I hope you enjoyed this mini series. I had a lot of fun making all 4 cards and showing you one every week in May. Look at our flower child. Oh, it's just so much fun. In case you missed it, maybe this is the first you're seeing of this series. I do have 3 other cards that I did with that cast of characters. We have the guy who joined the circus, we have the author and her scrapbook, and we have the marine biologist. I will leave them linked down below. Today I'll try to have quite a few links for you guys for all the things. Here is the one for the adventurous circus guy. Here's the one for the author, which also looks like a scrapbook. I really love this card. It has even more meaning for me now. Our marine biologist that I made last week, so much fun. His little origami ship is just too cute. And then now we get to add the baker to this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you spending your time with me, and I hope you're feeling inspired. See you later. Bye.